Hello everyone and welcome to the most difficult video that I have made on my channel. The reason I'm saying this is because tensions are quite high right now within the YouTube community. A lot of people are even refusing to cover this event, even though it's of historical importance, because they do not know how the platform is going to change its TOS in the next couple of weeks. And usually what happens with YouTube is that when it changes its TOS, they apply it retroactively. So even videos that have broken the TOS in the past can be deleted. Right now, the mainstream media, which is the main competitor of people like myself, as independent content creators would BTFO the mainstream media when it came to ratings a couple of years ago, now are on the losing side because, as you can see, the mainstream media is already calling for more internet censorship. Now, I am not as enlightened as the mainstream media, nor am I as smart as the people working at the billion-dollar corporations. But in my personal experience, if my fiance has a grievance with me, whether that grievance is real or imaginable, whether she's right or wrong, choosing not to address the grievance and forcing her to shut up is not the recipe for a healthy relationship. In fact, this is something that might lead to a breakup. The correct solution is to have an honest conversation about what that grievance is and try to come up to some mutual understanding. This is the recipe for a healthy relationship. But it doesn't really matter what I think, because I'm just a little guy with a little channel that tries to make people laugh and smile. In fact, I didn't even want to talk about news like this when I first started my channel, but yet here we are. So what happened? Well, 2 days ago in Washington, D.C., as I'm pretty sure most of you know, Trump supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol building. And this event has caused a massive reaction, not just from the American media and American politicians, but also from other world leaders. The reason it's being viewed as a coup is that the storming of the building happened as Mike Pence was certifying the 2020 election. Now, what's customary in American politics, especially in 2020, is that after every crisis, people are very quick to point fingers, and almost universally, they're going to blame the opposition. They're going to blame the people that they already disliked as the sole perpetrators of any type of crisis. Of course, this creates tribalism, it creates division, and in my humble opinion, it just creates escalation rather than de-escalation. For example, we already seen that the mainstream media is blaming the lack of censorship and is blaming big tech as the reason for this happening. But the mainstream media has always blamed big tech and always blamed the lack of censorship before this has happened. So to people like me, it doesn't seem like the mainstream media is trying to do a fair analysis. It just seems like they always try to accomplish more censorship, and now they are taking advantage of the crisis in order to push for their agenda. But if you want another and even better example, you can see Congresswoman Cori Bush posting on Twitter that she believes the Republican members of Congress who have incited this terror attack through their attempt to overturn the election must face consequences. They have broken their sacred oath of office, and she will be introducing a resolution calling for their expulsion. Now, if you look at the resolution that she posted, and you can check Twitter because this is still there, you can see that the date of the resolution which she posted is January the 5th. So 1 day before this event took place. In other words, she was going to do this anyway, and as I have mentioned that is customary in American politics, she is not using this to solve the problem. She is using the problem to solve this. Now, if you were to ask me on who is to blame, I would say that to blame is the people on the ground that broke the law. Each individual member is going to get arrested because a lot of them were streaming as they were breaking into the building and weren't wearing any sorts of coverings or face masks. So tracking them down is not going to be difficult. If they were organized and acted on behalf of someone, the police is probably going to find out as they're going to interrogate them. And if you really want to have this grand narrative, if you really want to blame an institution for it, my question is, how did people manage to get in into what should have been one of the most secure buildings in the United States. Now, hopefully this is going to be the main focus of some investigation, because there are videos on Facebook and Twitter which are getting removed, so this is why I can't show them here, because I don't know how YouTube treats these videos. But it does show law enforcement allowing people to go in. And this can be for two reasons. Now, number one, it can be because of the previous riots in the United States, which were chanting to defund the police and managed to create a stigma for being a police officer, that we saw a massive wave of police officers simply quitting. And because of this, maybe the police officers didn't have the numbers in order to secure the building. And noticing that they are vastly outnumbered, they just said, well, fuck it, and stand back as people just went in. So this is one of the explanations, but again, I don't see this happening everywhere because there have been officers injured by this, which is why an investigation is definitely required. Because this is, I think, what the question everyone should ask, regardless of political affiliation. 250 billion are being put into national defense in the United States every year. And yet the center of US politics has fallen in less than 2 hours to a bunch of clowns. Normally, the people responsible for organizing the defense and the politician in charge of those people, which is probably the mayor of DC, would have to issue a public apology and perhaps resign. But these are not normal times. The time now is to push for more censorship, more crackdowns, because the reason this happened is that there wasn't enough censorship and crackdowns to begin with. Now, from what I've seen on Twitter, this event has been condemned both by the right and the left. There is just one difference, like actor Kevin Sorbos, the person who played Hercules, pointed out. If you didn't condemn the BLM and Antifa riots when they were happening, your opinion on this riot isn't needed. And unfortunately, this goes to show another dark side of American politics, and I think this is going to be used for the foreseeable future. You see, you have certain politicians that use unsavory tactics and rhetoric in order to gain power. And once they do gain the power, they will pretend they have the moral high ground and consider the tactics that they have been using to be reprehensible and terroristic in nature. And the reason they manage to do this is because social media and the corporate press are on their side, and they act as their PR team. So when they're doing this, it's not publicized. Most people don't get to see it. For example, just a couple of months ago, when the White House was under siege by protesters and DC was burning, social media did not decide to step in and forbid people to organize for that event. The press, instead of calling it like now an insurrection attempt, they were mocking and making fun of the fact that the Secret Service had to take the president to a bunker. And that was the narrative that was set forth at the time. In fact, criticizing the protesters at the time could get you in trouble on social media. The real problem with this is that most people like to think in the now rather than to think about the future. Right now, the Democrats are in power. They have won. They have won the Senate, they have won the House, and they have won the executive branch. And you have people in power who have a very favorable mainstream media on their side, who have social media on their side, and who will never have to answer for any of these things. These things are not only never going to be brought up, but the people bringing them up might be censored. You might not see anything wrong with this right now because maybe you agree with the protests that happened this summer in the United States. Maybe you're a fan, maybe you even participated to them. But think about it this way. Trump is gone. He's out of the picture. And there are no more excuses. These people have all the power. And anything bad that's going to happen is going to be under their supervision. They can be held responsible for any bad political decision from the next 4 years. What makes you think that the same tactic they have used here in order to gain the moral high ground, by pretending that their rhetoric never happened, by censoring and canceling all forms of dissent, What makes you think they won't do it again to their future critics? Do you think big tech is going to allow you to criticize them the same way you could criticize the Trump administration? Do you think the mainstream media is going to investigate corruption from this administration the same way they were investigating it from the previous? The ring of power has been created, and now these people are ruling it. And while a lot of people on Twitter are saying, well, Trump supporters are evil, they deserve to be suppressed, I'm curious if the same suppression is now not going to be applied against people on the left, who just happens to disagree with some of the politics that the establishment is going to enact soon.